All right, let's get down to brass tacks on this price setting curve question. But first, I would like to let you know that this is straight out of the book, so check out question 9.5 in the book. But here we go. So one thing to note here is that everything is per worker. So average product of labor means basically the output and the value of that output that the workers are bringing in. So per worker, what's the average product? You can think of this as like the revenue that the workers are bringing in. Revenue. So that's the revenue. And then the firm has to pay cost, and an important cost is labor. And of course, the firms are going to want to see a profit. So where is profit shown here? Well, you can earn a profit if you receive more in revenue than you pay out in costs. Here we're looking at the cost of labor. So you can think about revenue less labor cost is going to be your area of profit. And this whole thing is for the average firm, and we assume firms kind of act the same way. And so this is for the whole economy. So this model builds on things that we didn't do in earlier chapters, but suffice it to say that the average product of labor can move when there's a technological revolution, for instance. And so things can move in here, but what you want to focus on is the markup. And your reading talks about what determines markup. There's a lot of good stuff in there. And basically focus on what firms can control, which will be reflected in their markup. What can firms control? They can control wage and the price that they sell their output for. Now, in a sense, firms can get it wrong. They can set the wage too low or too high, or they can get their price wrong. Nobody has a crystal ball. But I think one of the important parts about this whole model is the idea that things revert back to a certain equilibrium. And there's an idea here that there is sort of a standard markup. Markup, another good word for markup is real profit, right? So we're talking about the gap between the average product and the price setting curve. In other words, difference between revenues and costs. So if there is like a normal level of profit or markup in the economy, firms will kind of revert back to it, right? Because firms that get too high of a profit, either by setting their price too high or their wage too low, will either have nobody working for them if they're setting their wage too low, or nobody buying from them if they're setting their price too high. So firms are, in some sense, disciplined by the market. Oh, busted. So that's kind of what determines the height of the price setting curve, right? Given this average product of labor, the going normal rate of profit suggests that we need to have this much profit so that the price setting curve is here. But wait, there's more. This model is so cool and so rich that it's like playing 3D chess. We've even got more dimensions here. All right, so we see sort of that the economy goes back to its equilibrium at this, some normal level of profit, so that if wages or prices are too much different than that, they'll be sort of disciplined. But also, check out the horizontal axis here, employment. So notice points A and C, which correspond not only to, in A's case, it's if that's where the economy is, let me draw a point here. That one firm's markup would then just be that little vertical distance between the product of labor and their price point. So that markup is pretty small. Draw your attention to this reasoning here. Anytime the real wage is too high and the markup is too low, the firm will have to make adjustments. And it can control wage somewhat, but wages are also set by market conditions. So it definitely has control over its output price. And so when the firm's feeling its profits getting squeezed and it's doing worse than all the other firms, it'll raise prices. And what that does is makes it so that people can't afford to buy as much stuff. So overall, if all firms are doing this, raising their price, we're going to find that sales have to drop because we just can't afford as much. And that when that happens, that output will fall. And so here's the magical part about all this is we see, let's choose a different color here, that when we're anywhere over here, which is like, approaching maximum labor supply here, the more people are working, the closer you're at to full capacity. And so probably that points like A are going to happen, right? Your real wages are going to start rising as everybody has a job, and there's really no way to increase your output as a firm unless you, hire workers that are already working somewhere. So you've got to raise your offer wage. And so when the economy is really hot, like in this green zone, sometimes it gets overheated, and this kind of thing happens where wages rise rather, and the markup drops. And not only does the sort of markup always fall back to normal, but also that adjustment by the firms means that we fall back from being an overheated economy towards something more manageable, more sustainable. And the same thing works in reverse as well. And if you're looking for an alternate or different explanation of all this, this is just, you can look at some pretty good explanations in the 9.5 section of the book. So for the question, the answer is, at point C, the real wage is too low and the markup too high. So this is the reverse of the situation we had up there with A, right? Right there. So with C, what's happening is the wage is too low. And so the markup, the vertical distance up to the average product or revenue, will be too high. And that can be the result of a soft economy that is not employing very many people. Anyway, the response and the reaction and the dynamic sort of equilibrium return that the economy does is to start lowering prices so they can sell more and get out of the doldrums. And what that does is make things more affordable, so demand picks back up and output can rise again, returning us sort of back to happy, happy times. At least in theory.